So Ayurveda is the medical science of India as understood in the West, but actually it's an entire philosophy on how to live your life, because truly health is not the goal. Health is the vehicle for you to share your divine gifts, magic, and medicine. And when you tap into that why, your healing journey becomes so much more powerful. And it's about asking not what do I want, but how can I serve?
Welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast with Coach Strick. Join us as we expand the weight loss conversation to beyond just calories and dare to ask the question, why does eating less and exercising more sometimes not produce the desired results? Here's Coach Strick to discuss this Calorie Conundrum.
Hello and welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast. This is Coach Strick. And on today's episode, we have the Ayurvedic practitioner and CEO of Siddha Labs, Amaya Shiva. Amaya was inspired to help others on their journey to higher wellness and purpose after her own tremendous transformation through Ayurveda and emotional repatterning. She used to suffer from disease that left her barely able to walk for weeks for over 15 years and lived in constant stress and anxiety. This led her to the relentless investigation of all things medicine and eventually Ayurveda, the oldest medical science in the world. You can find out more about Amaya on Instagram at Amaya Shiva or on her website, siddhalabs.com. Let's hear what Amaya has to say about Ayurveda and your health. Amaya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So just like all the practitioners before you, a lot of the other guests that have come on the show, they have a story around their health. And that's what got them in to being a health practitioner and helping others. Could you share your story with our audience?
Absolutely. So I started having back issues when I was 14 years old. And this lasted for over 15 years of my life. And what would happen is I would get these like back spasms where my back would lock up and I couldn't even bend over to like put on my sock, right? It was just super painful and it was horrible, especially because I am an athletic person. Like I've been training gymnastics, martial arts, and dance my whole life, right? So nobody could figure out what it was, right? I did the MRIs, the x-rays, 4 rounds of physical therapy, chiropractic work, all the things. I did them twice and I would get these like little results, right? So that you get a little bit of hope, but then they would be crushed because like the back pain would come up again and it was just horrible. And it really culminated in when I was like 27 or 8, I had to quit my band. I had to quit training the martial arts I was in, and I was in school. I was in college at the time, and I could barely carry a backpack to class. And at this point, I was like, I'm never going to be able to ride a bike again. Like, this is so depressing, and was at my wit's end. Fast forward just a couple years later, I was in India with my partner at the time, and we were traveling around and we both ended up getting really sick on this 2-day train ride, like 103-degree fever. You're like being rattled on these ugly brown seats in the train. And like, we had diarrhea and we had to poop in a hole that was just like going straight on the train tracks. And long story short, we end up in an Ayurvedic hospital. And it's not like a Western hospital. It's very different vibe, like very calm and peaceful, like feels good to be there. It's not scary and sterile fluorescent lights. And anyways, while I was there, they talked to me about my health history. And when I told them about my back pain, they asked me about my digestion. And I was like, what is wrong with these people? They are tripping. Why are they asking about the food I'm eating? It just didn't make sense to me. And I should mention, I used to have chronic, like horrible indigestion, and I wasn't connecting those two, right? Like super pain in my gut all the time. And I kid you not, I did that 2 weeks of treatment at the hospital, 90 days of an herbal protocol, and diet changes, and my back pain was gone. Like this 15-year battle was rooted in what I was eating and how I was eating. And I had no idea, because according to Western standards, I had a healthy diet, right? I had a healthy lifestyle, but I was totally destroying myself because I didn't understand my digestive type and my constitution type, which we'll get into in this conversation today, because that's the key to understanding your health, right? Like we are not all the same, and there are different strategies for each body, for each person to optimize wellness. So that's the long story.
Yeah, no, that's a good story. I love that story. And only thing I have to say is I think you're kind of lucky in the fact that your back pain is something that I'm hearing from 50-year-old women, and so they start getting back pain in their 40s, and then they're in their 60s or 70s trying to figure it out, and so lucky for you, it happened so early. And then you got exposed to this new idea that, so outside the box of what's in, the normal American's brain, that it, cured your back pain, and now you improved your health, and now you're on a different path. That's one thing that still blows my mind in today's society, is that even doctors, I had a client, I think I said this on a show before, but I worked at this training people in groups, like fitness training. And I had this one client that was constantly having digestive issues. And she went to her doctor and she said, "Do you think what I'm eating could have anything to do with my digestive issues?" And they said, no, that didn't have anything to do. and that was like within the last 10 years, So I'm guessing that it hasn't progressed that much further than that. But it still blows my mind that like even doctors are saying like don't put the two and two together.
Well, and doctors are not scientists, and doctors are largely trained in this very rigid paradigm, and bless their hearts, like most of them want to do good and serve people. And they don't know how to look at someone and diagnose their health. Like in Āyurveda, we look at people. I don't need your test. I need the person in front of me. And that's this wisdom that's been used for 5,000 years. Like how long have we had a blood test? 50 years? But we throw everything else out the window because it's free. I don't know.
No, you're definitely on to something. There's so many. That's kind of the point of my podcast is everyone's focused on this calories in, calories out, but there's so many other options, so many other things that affect your health and your weight. That the same as you're talking about right now with the conventional medical. They're looking for symptoms. They're looking for a diagnosis. They're not trying to actually create and maintain health. They're trying to cure symptoms of some kind of disease. Yeah. And so there's reasons for that. But one thing you said was, and I've said it probably 50 times on this podcast, is that it all depends on the individual, and everyone's different. And that's why there's no one right diet. There's no one right workout plan or whatever. Could you expand on what you've been training, what you learn, and how the individual is what you focus on?
Oh, absolutely. So in Āyurveda, we recognize 64 constitution types, right? This means they're okay. So not only are there 64 constitution types, but how you care for yourself changes based on season, based on activity level, and based on age, which is also a season, right? Your season of life. And adding to that layer is what's the imbalance in your body, right? So it's this super amazing nuanced art And that doesn't mean you have to know all 64 types to get success from it. But we're really looking at the individual's needs and their digestive type. Like, this is information that is absolutely not talked about, not understood in the West. But there are these distinct digestive types, and you can adjust the diet and lifestyle in order to optimize them and bring them into balance. So those are the primary tools that I use with my clients.
And so, you're Ayurveda, you're practicing this, and this, you kind of described it there. It has 64 constitutions. Could you expand on what that actually is, like Ayurveda?
Yeah. Oh, so Ayurveda is the medical science of India as understood in the West, but actually it's an entire philosophy on how to live your life, because truly health is not the goal. Health is the vehicle for you to share your divine gifts, magic, and medicine. And when you tap into that why, your healing journey becomes so much more powerful. And it's about asking not what do I want, but how can I serve? How can I contribute by becoming the most fulfilled and bright and shiniest happy human possible? Because a rising tide raises all ships, right? This is really what Ayurveda is about.
So it's a full holistic program for your entire life.
Yes.
And so you're talking about the constitutions and your digestive type and stuff like that. How do you determine what your constitution is or what your digestive type is?
Yeah. So constitution is determined largely by observation. Like, you can look at someone and know a lot about their constitution type, and then combining it with pulse analysis. Like, it's called Nadi Parikshanam. It's not the same as Western pulse. It's not just listening to the rate. There's a lot more information there. So those are the tools we use for that. And then the digestive type is determined by how you feel when you eat food and what's happening with your poop. Like, your poop is giving you a lot of information when you know how to analyze it and read it, as is your tongue. So one simple trick I teach all of my clients is scrape your tongue in the morning so you can see how much of a coating you have, right? Whatever's coating your tongue is coating your entire gastrointestinal tract. And much like a pipe under your sink, right, when it builds up with that funky, gooey stuff, it needs to be cleaned and flushed out. Same with your body, because that will totally impede digestion and your ability to absorb nutrients. Because you are not what you eat, you are what you can digest, assimilate, and absorb. And if you don't have the digestive capacity to absorb your food, it doesn't matter how much organic or like how many expensive supplements you're taking, you are just paying for expensive poop.
Yeah, that's an important part that a lot of people overlook. Yeah. And that's the fact that it doesn't always, what you're eating and what it says on the nutrition label, or what is, whatever the nutrition, is in that food, doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting that in your body.
Exactly.
And so that's definitely an important part. So before we move on to talk a little bit about like the weight loss component of that, I want to dive in a little bit deeper into some of the terminology that's used in your method of coaching and lifestyle. What is that exactly is dosha?
Great question. So dosha means fault. And it's like, it describes those energies in your body that can be disturbed or disrupted by lifestyle and environment, right? So it's like those things that can be vitiated. Now, we're looking at 3 primary doshas in Ayurveda. And they split up the 5 elements. So we've got vata, which is air and ether and it governs movement. It's the principle of movement within the body, from speech coming out of your mouth to like the digestion and peristalsis. This is all vata. Then we have pitta dosha, which is the combination of fire with a little bit of water, right? Which is kind of an uneasy relationship because those are opposites. So pitta has some volatility. It is the principle of digestion, and it digests not only food, but it's the digestion of knowledge into wisdom, right? And then lastly, we have kapha, which is earth and water. And this is really the bulk of all of our bodies, right? We are mostly earth and water. And depending on your unique combination of those doshas, right, which one is dominant in your body, you will have different tendencies, meaning you'll have a natural energy level, you'll have a natural athletic ability. And so we look at those in people and then customize like the lifestyle around that.
So is the combination of the three doshas ultimately the result in one of the 64 constitutions, or is that separate?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
That's what it is. Okay.
That's what it is. Yeah. So as an example, I am pitta dominant and vata secondary, which the way I like to describe the doshas is kind of like candles, right? Vata is this little tea candle. So vata dominant people, they don't have a lot of fuel because they have the least amount of earth and water. Like they have less wax to burn. And then pitta's like in the middle. They have a little more, but like fiery people, they'll drag their bodies behind. Like they'll be dying. They're like, but I have to do 10 more push-ups, like blood coming out of their face. This is pitta.
Okay.
And then kapha has the most fuel, right? This constitution type has the most fuel and is the type that is prone to holding more weight because there's more earth and water element in that body. We'll get into that today.
Mm-hmm. All right, sweet. So another term that I would like the definition of is Dharma. What is Dharma?
Yes, Dharma. Oh, great question. Dharma has really become this hip word, and I'm really glad for that, actually, because your Dharma is your divine contribution to society. It is that magic and medicine on your heart, right? It is that soul imprint, that gift that only you can give, that only you can share with the world in your unique way. And every single human has one of these gifts, but not everybody taps into it, right? It's a tragedy to leave your divine gifts to the wayside. And this happens in all kinds of people from people we would call bums who don't do anything to very high performing professionals who maybe they went into, surgery because this is expected of them from their family. But in fact, their gift is to be an incredible singer that reminds people of the divinity of the world, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So, you talked about it, you hit on it a couple of different ways, but the first way I'd like to go into like a conversation about like weight loss and health is how in your method of, coaching and practicing can gut health and chronic disease kind of affect what your weight ultimately ends up being?
Ooh, good question. So the Ayurvedic word for your digestive capacity is Agni, right? And there's not even such a word in Western health. Like there's no word to describe your digestive capacity. So Agni means fire. And this is a beautiful analogy because fire, the like size of a fire determines how much fuel it can burn, right? So if you've ever had a fire camping, you know that if you have a very small fire, it is not the time to put a big log on it, because what?
Smother it.
Yeah, the fire will go out. And then what's left in the fire? The log, right?
Yeah.
The unburned log, right? This is what happens to people when they're gaining a lot of weight. Their fire, their digestive capacity is so diminished that everything they put inside their body is not getting cooked, and it just sits in there, right? That's the principle. So that's one type. Similarly, like when people are super hangry, right? This kind of person where you're like, okay, if we're going on a road trip, we're going to Whole Foods first and getting like 2 bags of groceries because I'm not dealing with you. This is because that fire is too big, right? The fire is too big, and no matter what they put in there, it's just like the raging inferno demolishes it. So it's about finding that balance and creating that balance within your body for the desired results. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
And so you talked before about the weight and the different doshas. Could you expand on that?
Yeah. So Kapha dosha is the one that's going to hold the most weight. And that's because it's more earth and water, right? These people have more of that quality in their body. What's funny to me is, in the West, there's a certain obsession with thin as the desirable way to be. But in Ayurveda, like, we're always trying to increase Kapha dosha as we age, like not when it's out of balance and there's a lot of weight, right? But it is earth and water is what keeps you juicy as you age. So like we're all slowly turning from plump little grapes, right, as babies, into shriveled raisins as we get older. Like, this is the truth. You literally dry out with age. So, and then we have Pitta, which is in the middle, like they have a very medium build. And this is the body type that can show a lot of muscle definition. Like people who lift, they want to look like Pitta people. And then Vata, being mostly air, like they can't gain weight very well at all. So those are the generalizations for the types.
So did you say kapha? Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm that, what if I don't want to be that? Like, is there a way to kind of go more towards pitta?
No.
Or no?
And if you really don't want to be kapha, this begs a different conversation of like, what do you think determines someone's worth? Because I think every person is inherently divine, is inherently beautiful, inherently has a gift that they can share with the world, and that your body and your journey, you chose it for a reason. And reality is made up, right? Yes, there are certain laws to the world and universe that we live in, but the judgment of what is good or bad is totally up to the individual. So we can torture ourselves with all the things we are not, or we can tap in and tune into gratitude and acknowledge the blessings of what we have and who we are, right? So don't try to change that. Change the mindset.
Mindset. Yeah. So that kind of leads me into the next place I wanted to go with you, and that on your website you had a lot of it's like not a lot of talk about health, and there's not a lot of talk about the method that you use to help people with their health. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of talk about things like calling forth your highest unfolding so you can live with purpose, mm-hmm. Emanating your highest self, and things like that. And I think you were hitting on it right there. But the point of my podcast is kind of it's geared towards weight loss, mm-hmm. but we talk a lot about health because health is important for weight, mm-hmm. but ultimately behind that is in alignment with what you're talking about here. Mm-hmm. The point of getting healthy is not so you can lose weight, even though that's a side effect. Right. The point of getting healthy is so you can live your Dharma, I guess.
Yes. Nailed it.
And so could you expand on what you when you work with people, obviously you own a company that has these supplements and stuff like that, but what is it that you're really getting at in that coaching program when you're working with people?
If I could assign one word, it would be digestion. And I don't mean just of your food. I mean of your traumas and your mental experiences. And what I do with people, we always start in the physical with the gut health. Like this is so important, right? This is the foundation of where your energy is coming from, so that you can then tap in and tune into that greater purpose. So the body is one component. And then I work with clients on emotional healing. Like, what are the stories that are holding you back and limiting you from relishing in your own magnificence? And then we take a look, we actually work with my master astrologer to understand people's karma. Like, what are those things in this life that they have chosen, and helping people to get unstuck from the stories that they make up about why they can't do something. because so many people are stuck in mediocre patterns of life because of things they're afraid of happening that have never happened, that they have absolutely no evidence for. Like, I had a client once, she's like, well, I can't do this thing because it's going to upset my parents. But she didn't know that. She projected. And once she, communicated to them, they were actually really happy for her and like excited for her career change. But this is an example of how the mind operates when left unchecked, right? The mind is not who you are. Mental chatter is not who you are. You are the divine, unchanging witness to all of that. But we get caught up. And if you extracted the mental chatter of your head and it was a person sitting next to you, like, how long would you hang out? You'd be like, dude, you are schizophrenic. Get away from me.
Yeah,
so
true.
Working on all of that, because that is the work that transformed my own life, right? And I had to heal my body first so that I could heal myself emotionally and start to become the force of love that I am. And that actually everybody is in their core.
Yeah, so that's very powerful. One thing you said was working with like emotions and past traumas. And so I get with the physical, you're working with supplements, changing the diet. With the astrology, you're working with someone on that. What kind of techniques or tools do you use to work on these emotions and these stories people are telling themselves? Is it like talking through it in a different way? Is it using certain methodologies? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's number one to solving any problem is awareness, right? So getting people to tune in to these patterns. And in Āyurveda, we understand that the pathway of the mind is the entire body. You cannot separate them. Like, your body and mind are like this. And when you have a repeated emotional experience, it means you're having a repeated physical experience. And what's so dope about understanding that is you can then learn how to. So I teach my clients how to tune into the physical sensation of an emotion and how to sit with it, right? Most emotions, if you just sat with them fully, only take 90 seconds to process. But we do these things where we think about the thing that's triggering the emotion, so then the loop starts, or we try to distract ourselves. And part of the process I take my clients through is learning how to sit within the discomfort and to experience gratitude for it. Because pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice.
That's powerful stuff. So many important points. One point that you said earlier, the fact that you had to heal your body before you could, work on the other stuff. And that's a big issue. And that's kind of why I'm kind of passionate about this weight loss thing, because I know if you do what you need to do to lose weight in a healthful way, then your body's going to be healthy. And then you have the energy and reserves to work on other stuff. It's so hard to work on. So hard to think about, what you're talking about, which is really hard, getting in the, you're in the gutter working in the mud. It's really hard work. You can't really focus on that. You don't have energy for that if you're in pain.
That's right.
And so many people are walking around with back pain or stomach digestive issues or whatever physical issue they have that can be resolved, even these chronic diseases that can be resolved. So you have more resources, energy to focus on these things that are actually the root cause of the issue.
Right.
And so, that's just powerful information that you're sharing with us today. Is there anything else that you would, if someone were to come to you and that was the issue with them, was weight loss, and they've tried every, diet and everything, and they come to you, what would you tell them, and what would be the process that you would go through? I mean, you explained a lot of the process, but, just summarize it a little bit here for us.
Yeah. Well, it would depend on the person, right? Because there's no like one size fits all. So always looking at the individual. One tip I give most people who are looking to increase their weight loss or like decrease weight, right? Is getting your legs, like exercising your legs early in the morning is super, super important, because your legs and your vision and your stomach are all connected to the element of fire. And remember that fire is the element responsible for digestion. So when we get people out there sweating in the morning, like really sweating and doing squats and that kind of stuff, and then adding things like fresh ginger tea, you can see a lot of change there, right? And some people are just going to hold more weight on their body. And instead of like beating yourself up and comparing yourself, right? Because comparison is the thief of joy. Looking at how you can build self-love and let go of narratives that don't serve you. Because how on earth are we all supposed to like achieve this model style of fitness, right? Like I'm really lucky in this culture that like I have what is considered a desirable form, right? Like, and there are things that Kappa people have, like people with more earth and water that in retrospect, like I would just love to have, like more energy. And what's so interesting is that Kappa people also have a natural ability to be the lovers of the world. Like they are the natural nurturers, and that is such a gift. So helping people to see the gifts of what they think is a problem is a huge part of the work that I would do.
All right. So could you tell us a little bit about your company, your supplement company, or your...
Oh, yes, I would love to. Yeah. So I have a supplements, an Ayurvedic botanicals supplements company called Siddha Labs. And I came to creating this company after a trip to what is called Natural Products Expo West, right? This is like the biggest natural products showcase marketplace in the Western world. 80,000 people attend this show. And I was so unimpressed by the quality of supplements. I don't know if you know, but most companies are white labeling. Like they are not making their own products. They go to someone and they have great marketing, right? And they're like, we solved this problem. But when you look at the formula, it's like garbage. It's just not put together correctly. Much like cooking, right? There's an art and science to making food taste really good. There's an art and science to supplementation. And what's so cool about my background is that as part of my training for Āyurveda, we learned clinical herbalism. So I sat and watched my teacher literally create thousands of formulas customized to people in front of him, right? And so I got this really cool ability to make formulas that are super effective and based in clinical practice and experience, right? It's very different from just an idea like, oh yeah, like a protein smoothie is healthy, says who? In my world, that's one of the unhealthiest food combinations, right? Like fruit with protein is a big no, very hard to digest. And I see that same kind of stuff in the world of vitamins. So we're using very high quality herbs. Everything is organic. Everything is sourced from very responsible companies. And that is my standard of care for anyone that I'm serving, whether it's my client one-on-one or someone who's buying my supplement.
Right. Yeah. Sounds like some high quality stuff you got going there. If the audience would like to learn more about you, find out more about you, where should they go?
Yes. You can check out my website, amayashiva.com. And Instagram is another great way to connect with me directly. You can DM me there at Amaya Shiva. And if you want to look at the supplements, go to siddhalabs.com. Lots of options.
All right, Amaya, thanks for coming on today. There's lots of knowledge bombs being dropped today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly been a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Amaya. Today, Amaya hit on many important Ayurvedic ideas that can affect your health and life, including the value of knowing your dosha, constitution, and body type. Another important idea she brought up was that of purpose. The simple question of why we want to get healthy is often overlooked or only superficially contemplated by many people today. Amaya believes that we should get healthy to live our purpose in life, or Dharma. I feel the same way. You just can't be the best version of yourself if you are tired, in pain, overweight, out of shape, and unable to think clearly. Oftentimes, when you find your why, the obstacles that seem to be holding you back in the past become irrelevant or less difficult to overcome because your why is so much more important. And with that said, this is Coach Strick saying thanks for listening, and remember, when calories in, calories out doesn't work, that, my friend, is a calorie conundrum.
This podcast, including Coach Strick and guests, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects for the use of any information contained herein. Coach Strick and/or guests may recommend products or services in which they have a direct or indirect financial interest. To find out more, please visit www.calorieconundrum.com.